Hey, how's it going? Today, we're going to work on artificial intelligence agents connected to PDFs. Let me get rid of this here, and we'll do it like a legal assistant. First of all, just a reminder that we're starting a series of events. I think you can hear me well. If not, let me know in the comments. Leave comments so I can see them. And as I was saying, we're going to do a series of events every week, one in English and one in Spanish. And we'll focus on building real-time data applications, applying this thing called vibe coding, which is working with AI to make development faster. And you'll see how, by crossing expert programming knowledge with artificial intelligence, you can build applications very quickly. In this link, we'll be posting all the episodes we record. If you want to receive notifications when I publish the next live streams, you can leave your email here. Also, here in Streams, you can see all the ones we've already recorded. Back in the day, we did a data stories program, where we worked with data from the energy sector, especially with I-90 files, battery optimization, and you have them available here. If you click, for example, on See All, you have them all listed here. You click on one, and you can watch it through the website on YouTube. In the end, it's the same dynamic as always. We code live. Practical cases. Another thing I want to mention, I'm already working with companies ranging from about 1,000 employees, also 100, up to even 5,000. And we're offering consulting services, also training. So if you want to have a discovery call to see how we can collaborate on any project, you can go to the datons.com website. And here you can schedule a call with me, where you can see what we're going to do in the call. And you have my availability in these Zoom links. So yeah, no commitment at all. We have a call. We get to know each other and exchange experiences. All right, let's get to the live stream. Here you can also see what we do, examples and such. All right, let me leave that here. Let me set the scene for you. Hold on, let me fix this. I don't know why, but it's not rendering the presentation here. Live stream glitches. Well, here with the chat. You see right now that I'm putting the local host here, which should be working, but it's not. But anyway, even with the chat, I can quickly figure out how to solve it. In theory, this should make it reload. Let me try a different approach here. And there it is. Although you'll see both presentations at the same time, what's coming and what's there. Focus on the one on the right. So what are we going to do? We're going to build a chat where we'll ask questions like, how is the secondary band price calculated? And through a documentation system that we'll structure in a database, it will search for the specific reference and tell us, according to article so-and-so from such date, it references it here and gives us the explanation. For that, we need to understand the context of why this is relevant. If you remember from other streams I did a few weeks ago, months I'd say, we worked with the detail of a unit's programming schedule. That is, imagine a photovoltaic generation plant, or the windmills you see in the landscapes. When you say that windmill is going to generate power because there's wind, and you're going to inject it into the grid, you have to commit it in an electricity grid program that happens in several stages. For example, we have the viable program, which is the first one you see here, and here it says, for example, that it's minus 203 megawatts that can't be committed. Maybe here it's because there would be some curtailment. And then, in the next one, it recovers. In the rest of the programs, you're seeing how it gives us information about the different energy commitments it's making, because you're getting to know better the weather forecast, whether there will be wind. The first program, the proposal is made at 2 p.m. the day before, and as time goes on, we can secure energy as we have a more feasible weather forecast. So how do we make these specific calculations? What's the order of the programs and such? If we go to OMI, we can see that there isn't just one price, but several. Let's see when the page loads. Here we have the average price, which would be the spot. Then we have intraday market sessions, which here, for example, we have for Spain and Portugal. Then we have continuous markets, interconnections and such. So there are many markets that work to propose the energy for the. If I now go to the Red Electrica information, here we can see that there are several components. If we go, let's see. Here you see there are several programs: daily technical restrictions, operating base, secondary band, technical restrictions, etc. So there are several programs. And to work with the document you have here, with the graph, we need to know in what order the programs happen and how they're calculated. Because in the end, all this information comes from the BOE. And to calculate that, we need to know where those I-90 files are, what corresponds to each program, know the price source, whether it comes from OMI or ESIOS. The problem we've had is we had to configure the legislation according to the BOE. What formula is calculated for secondary band prices, for example, and it also takes quite a bit of time while you're reviewing the BOE and going through the. So what we're going to do is, based on all the electrical energy code in the BOE, which contains all the official documentation, we're going to create a chat tool that can connect to all this information specifically to ask questions and configure that calculations file. If we come to the example we're going to use, we have here the mapping first, the mapping of programs to sources. For example, the daily operating base program comes from the I-90s in such sheet of the I-90s, and the secondary band comes here in another sheet. To configure all that information, I also need to know what the dispatch rules are, what specific information is in the I-90s. And here we can see that YAML file that will help us configure the chat itself by diving into the BOE documentation. And it will tell us, for example, phase, up or down signs, and how the formulas are applied for the final billing. So what are we going to do today? We're going to build an ETL that extracts all the documentation from the PDFs and converts it to Markdown first, so that it's easier to interpret according to the headers each one of the sections that are in the official documentation we have here in the BOE. After that, what we're going to do is create a database that structures all the documents by sections or by headers. Then we'll determine it's called ChromaDB. It's a vector database that works very well for storing text documents. If you want to see it, you have it here. They even have a business here. They have open source and also have a separate business, which is it. But if you know programming, which is what we're going to do today, we can deploy it ourselves. All right, next will be, after having structured the database with the documents, we'll create an API in Python so we can query the information. And finally, I'll give you a demo on how the agent itself can work with these documents, just like we saw at the beginning. We're going to work with Python, ChromaDB, as I've already told you. So yeah, we'll start with the programming, and any questions you have, send them in the comments, and we'll address them. In the end, in the stream, there are going to be many errors. You can interact, ask me questions like. In the end, it will also be a way to teach you how to work with vibe coding. Asking the. So let's do it. First here, I always work with. I think it's fine here. And here we have it. Yes. Can you see it well? So here in the terminal, for those who don't know, well, there are a series of commands you can apply. If I ask it pwd, it means the directory where I am right now, which is this one here on my computer. And when I open Claude Code, which is basically a tool to connect to all the documents in that folder, if I hit L, it will tell me here that I have a data folder and an SRC folder. So I'm going to say, Claude Code. I usually use dangerously skip permission, so it doesn't keep asking me all the time. Do you want to apply? So I go straight ahead. More or less, I know. I mean, I have a lot of accumulated experience working with Claude Code. I know it's not going to do anything weird that would delete projects or remove them. So I enter it here. I can also even press Shift-Tab so it doesn't. And then, here it would. And now, here I'm going to tell it how to work with the documents. I'm going to say, I'm going to go first to the official documentation, which is what I have to download. And here I have the PDF. I'm going to copy it. Give me a second. Let me put the chat here on my phone and perfect. All okay. All right. Well, let's go with the PDF. If I click here, I think it downloads it too. If I open the document, well, we have it here. And it says, the electrical energy code is, let's see how many pages. It has 2,700 pages, because here all the legislation about energy is collected. And here state legislation comes. In the end, every year they publish new things and all those official documents are collected here. That if I'm wrong, if there's an expert around. And here comes the systematic index. We have Spanish Constitution. Law of November 27th, electric sector. I'm going to search for some technical word. For example, secondary band. Of course, even. I think the document doesn't. Even the reader we have here doesn't interpret the document. That could be a problem. And it's tight here. I'm going to put band here. Here I can already see something. Regulation. Okay. So now, how do we build to download the document? If I say here now, I need to download this document and put it in data/references, and we paste it here. The chat itself can even do it for you, and it already puts it in the folder. And here with this command that it executes from the terminal, it's telling it to put the content of the URL in, and here it's already downloaded. Because when we work with the chat from a place that's not a code editor, well, I can't navigate to see if in the folder structure, so I'm going to exit here. I hit Ctrl+C a couple of times. Now Ctrl+L, and I usually work with the NeoVim code editor, which is pretty fast. And here it already allows me to get inside and see the folders that come here. Here even I had it twice. And here I would have screwed it up. I'm going to say to download it again. Now here, let's see. I usually work in this code editor with lots of shortcuts. I don't recommend you try to emulate what I do because I'm going to do it to be very fast. If you're interested in me doing a tutorial on how to work with LazyVim, with NeoVim, to work with these so focus more on the way of thinking, how I interact with the chat and such. So here, in space, I have the menu of all the things I can do with NeoVim. In the A menu, I have here all the commands to work with Claude, and specifically, the one I want is to continue with Claude Code without permissions. So I press C here. And with that shortcut, I go straight to it, opening the document here. And now I can interact at the same time that I can see on the side panel the documents I'm working with. So I'm going to tell it to download it again. Download it again and this is something if you want to reference it, ideally, directly from the folder you tell it. So now I hit the S key, I send it, and it already takes it into account. And right here, we have it. And we already have it. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is extract the information from the document and have it in a readable format for the database itself. We're going to do it in Markdown. So I'm going to ask the chat directly here that I want to set up a query system for the document. If it references it here, it's going to read it. But since the file is so big, I don't want it to read the PDF document, but I would need to set up a database for documents and also extract to Markdown. I say I think to maintain the heading system. I say I think because many times when we face a new problem, we need the chat itself to give us more novel solutions that maybe it understands that there are better options. And another thing I do is, in the chat itself, I have an instruction that I call output. And here in the output style, if you go by default, it always completes the tasks you ask it. And this is very dangerous because when I want the chat to propose to me and not execute the code directly, so what I want is for it to be in scalable proposal mode, which is an instruction I've told it. When I tell you something like propose, etc., don't edit anything in the file. Give me several Who knows how to query the information and what type of solutions you want, whether more robust or something quick, etc. I tell it. And let's see what it proposes. And let's see. Here it tells me it's summarizing what I want. Here it's a PDF system, a query system, and now it's going to provide me with a scalable solution. And Okay, let's see this proposal. Here it tells me, preserving the hierarchical structure of headers for contextualized responses. Because of course, when we ask the chat, and here you'll see for example in the document, there are tons of headers, several sections, and within each one we have subsections. Well, maybe first the chat is more comfortable asking, give me all possible, especially in this document that contains all the legislation from several different days of the energy sector. And here it tells me the current state. Here it proposes that solution. And of course, here the failures start. Why? Because it's proposing SQLite, which is a very basic and here we couldn't work with the ChromaDB system, which might be more interesting because it does vector searches based on word similarity. And this saves you queries and queries. This is something I should tell the chat here. I say, hey, but SQLite is a very basic solution. Shouldn't we work with something like ChromaDB that can find by similarity? Let's continue with the document. Here's the PDF extractor that converts the PDF to Markdown. I see it well. The chunker which divides into segments preserving section context. Good too. And the rest, I think I see it well. Of course, here it proposes FTS5, a fast search without machine learning and embeddings. For those who don't know, embeddings, I'm going to put it here. Embeddings are a way to transform words into numbers, into vectors, and place them in space in such a way that by antithesis, for example here, man and woman, it puts them at both extremes because one is totally the opposite of the other. Just like if you put, for example, bad or good, etc. Here we have several examples, but in the end, it's a way to structure words in space through numbers so that the search is much faster, even if they don't put the specific word. And it does a similarity search. And of course, here it's telling us that to avoid embeddings, well, to apply this solution. But we've already seen that for now, the ChromaDB. So we tell it. And for now, it won't proceed with the plan because we've stopped it cold there. And now, here it says, if we ask it, requirements for self-consumption installations, well, it's going to tell us it finds several titles, and in this case, it will choose the first one because it has the highest similarity. And that's how, even if you haven't specifically put requirements here, well, by the rest of the context, self-consumption installations, which it mentions here and here too, or installation, it can already associate it. Okay. Well, for now, I think I see it well. It's going to give me the reference here. It's going to structure it in Markdown. And then, after it's going to do it in ChromaDB. But of course, what I also want is, because if not, then when I do the checks, if it opens a document that's very long, well, systems even crash. So I'm going to tell it here that I'd like to export several Markdown documents according to the sections we have here, which could be the second-level header sections, that we have here Spanish Constitution, electric sector law, etc. And we segment it that way. So we come here to the document. We're going to tell it, I'd like to export according to the H2s of the PDF document. And another thing, before starting with the implementation, would be for the chat itself to investigate the document because it hasn't seen it yet. So I'm going to tell it here, read the document and check how the headers are to improve the proposal. And what I'm going to do here is instead of being all the time repeating the same proposal, which is quite uncomfortable for the chat, I'm going to put it in planning mode. And this planning mode is going to create a physical file, I mean a computer file, where it registers the plan and updates it according to the... This is what I'm saying first, that it's going to read, and it has a size of more than 20 Mandelbusser. Impossible. And, of course, here it already starts with Python code. But I'm going to stop it cold because when it puts Python code here directly to execute from the terminal, it usually gets it wrong a lot, and it's constantly building the text of the same code. So here it's very good practice to tell it every time you work with Python code. Write it in a file in a folder. Let's put random. let's put scripts. And I tell it, add it to the ChromaDB memory that I've done in the end, so that if tomorrow I return to the project in a new conversation, well, I don't have to repeat it. And now, what it's going to do is create a document there that's ChromaDB with those instructions. And here it put it for me. It's saying always when you write Python code, you put it in scripts. Forget about using execute Python here with C command. And that's it. Little tricks. Okay. Now here that it's read the document, look here how it did it. First it wrote the file in the script. Let's open it. And here we have it. We see here the PDF file, the code it used, which in this case was fits from PyMuPDF. And first what it did is, and it's proposing a structure based on everything it's read that you already see here, how it structures it well, saying, well, summary, systematic index, each one of the header segments we had seen from third chapter. Let's see what it says. Spanish Constitution, partial, which we have here. And here it already starts with titles, third chapter. Okay, of course here it's asking me how I want the document, and here it's telling me, well, how to structure the markdowns. I'm going to ask for now. Let's see. Because many times, I mean, you can have an idea about how to do the system, but maybe the chat knows better than you. So in these moments, it's the typical ones to ask the chat to see what it recommends and pros and cons. I'm going to tell it, what would you recommend based on what you've seen of the document? And one thing, I'm already entering full promotion of almost everything. I'm going to use here the whisper flow, which is like a tool that if I tell it something, it's going to write it. I'm going to tell it here. I want you to tell me. I went blank. I was going to tell it, what would you recommend for me to use in this type of problem given everything you know? Stop. It puts it there for me. I write it, and off we go. I mean, it's like, you blink and the computer is already moving automatically. And here it's telling me L1 to go with files. Of course, if we do L2, maybe it's very granular. Well, it's going to create many small files, and when we do the query, we can tell it where we want to do it, which was what I was also saying about how to look first in the index and structure it. But anyway, I also tell you, I'm telling you, many times here it's not so much about anticipating the problems, but once you have a solution. Since these codes are already well structured, then you can make a modification and the system can work just as well. So I'm going to tell it here that yes, and avanti tutti. Here what the chat has done is, based on all the conversation context, everything I've already told it, it's created a series of tasks here that you see. First, create the extraction script. Then you do the execution. Of course, here we already see that it's already done it, that it's exported the documents in data fetch markdown. And let's see here, data pack markdown. We have all the information, so if I click on anyone, here I can see all the documentation that's been written from the PDF. Of course, here I still see too little in some. Maybe the quality isn't so much, but anyway, it's fine. We're not going to be perfectionists for now. Here it's been 2048 lines. Okay, disaster. Okay, here it's already starting to create the indexing script in Chroma, but we're going to stop it here, because I'm not liking that. For example, the document doesn't structure it well. Here, for example, I'd like to have, since it's a Markdown document, to have maybe some headers. This one is a bit more structured, so I'm going to comment on it, and here we're going to tell it. Right now, that might be relevant for later ingesting into the ChromaDB database. And also, the lines aren't being joined together. You're just doing a graph, which means not starting with the not starting with line breaks every time you find the boundary. Let's see what this does here. Let's see. Apparently, there's a library called PyMuPDF for LLM. That might be good for this kind of problem. Let's investigate what it's about. Let me check the library to see what it does. But here, there are different document extraction solutions, several libraries, and here it tells you what each one does. Also, another thing. In the end, let me see. And we're not here to watch the clock. I'm going to tell it here. You're taking too long to execute. I'll put the text. You're taking too long to execute? So better to shorten the processing to 100 pages or 200, whatever you think is appropriate to speed up the development process. Here it's doing it. Here it's already modifying it. In the end, notice one thing. If the chat does everything, the only thing you need to learn here is how to interact with the chat and how to anticipate the development modes of a programmer. Because of course, maybe out of ignorance, you want to do everything at once, or because you don't have programming experience and you don't know that all this code stuff is scalable and reproducible. That is, the code that's already there can be reused for all pages. If we make sure that for 100 or 200 pages it already works well, then this makes the development time, instead of waiting. Like before, we've already spent 3 minutes and had nothing. Now maybe in development when we're still seeing, hey, does it work? Does it not work? Well, we have it faster, and it allows us to develop the solution sooner. Doing vibe coding will be one more way to know how to develop programs. For those of you who don't have programming experience, it's going to be a bit harder because you need to know, hey, how would I have made this development simpler or more agile? Unless you work on projects coding one-on-one, you won't experience it firsthand. But if you already anticipate these types of problems, you could be noting down principles about how to work with AI, and then you apply these tricks each time. This is going even slower now. There's an option here to run it in the background. I'm going to click here and tell it so I can keep talking, and I'm going to ask it, hey, why is it taking so long? Now I've told it to try with 10 pages. Let's see if it works. Try with the AI one, not the normal one, which always gets things wrong. Okay, here we have it. Let's open it. And this is what we got. Code D, the latest legal version. And if we compare it with the document, let's go to the beginning. Of course, here for example, I didn't grab this. And now the rest. Of course, here's the problem. Being a legal document, and it has here for example, it doesn't have headers, but it has this text of legal symbols. We'll have to make our own processor for legal texts, although there's also a problem here, and it's that we're working at the beginning with the table of contents. The first pages are the table of contents. They have no relevance. I think we should select several pages in the middle of the document to see that it works well. Let's set the value to 180, which we have around here. Here, we at least have something. It starts at 173, and now we already have directly energy sector law. It starts at 173 on 50 pages, and the document is in Markdown test. Here it is. Okay, so here, what do we have? We have that. It selected the heading here well, which would be, well, of course, here it didn't do it very well either. It didn't take this as if it were a heading, and it's not. This one here, it did take it well. And here, when it starts with the 1, this should be like a document structure of heading. Here with the 2, same thing. When it finds articles, now here, it finds the article. In a way, here it does find titles, articles, general provisions. Of course, here I already have several doubts. That is, I'm going to ask the chat directly. I have several doubts about how to work on the pre-processing of this type of legal documents, because the library extraction doesn't take into account the specifications of this type of legal documents that are divided by articles, titles, etc. So I don't know how to tackle this type of problems to structure the document. I don't know if we should first extract the raw text with this library and then do a pre-processing that detects when there are articles, when there aren't, and create like a system for structuring documents adapted to legal documents and not so much through the Markdown system, which is through headings from 1 to 6 levels. What do you think, guys? Are you learning a lot? Leave it there in the comments so we can get to know each other and make this more entertaining. Let's see what it told us. Proposal, and it tells me here, BOE legal hierarchy, law, title, article. And of course, here's the problem with Markdown. Well, proposed solution. JSON structure with metadata. Of course, here it's going to structure it according to law. And then this will allow us to search by articles, by titles. I like it. So let's say here, yes, but work with YAML, not JSON. JSON has too many quotes and key value pairs, and it's a mess to work with that. I prefer a YAML document. For those who don't know, a YAML document is like this. You put a key, colon, and the value. Key, colon, and value. Key, colon, and value. And with text, well, normally with JSON we would have to open braces, then quotes, ATR, colon, 61TD, comma. A bit dirtier than JSON. In this house we're very minimalist. The less? First, let's see what it did. Well, fragments, law, chapter, Article 1, Article 2. There's something I don't quite see here, and that is the system is like first going from PDF to Markdown, and then to YAML. And I wonder if it would be faster to work with YAML directly from the PDF. But I don't know if this will make it even slower. I'm going to ask it here. I see you're working with the PDF to Markdown processor and then going to YAML. And I'm wondering if there would be a way to do the parsing from PDF to YAML to avoid having to export the files. But well, maybe. Of course, also since PyMuPDF for LLM is a bit slow, maybe it would be better another way to structure this parsing directly from PDF to YAML in our own way. But I don't know. I mean, you recommend, because here I'm unfamiliar with the libraries. We're already using regex. It builds paragraphs by special position. All right, dude, let's go with it. Yes, and here, of course, since there's also a lot of scripts we've already created. Since we haven't built the actual code project yet, which we're going to structure properly in SRC, we can keep all the scripts here. I mean, we don't need to ask it to delete. Let's say another thing I see when I'm in consulting sessions with my clients is that I teach them to do vibe coding and all that. But many times at the beginning, they start asking for things. And things, and things, and things. And in the folder here, the first one in the repository, the one they upload to Git and all that, there are tons of documents. And in the end, I say, well, I have to integrate all this into the web application, which is an internal tool that the rest of the employees work with whom we develop digital tools. And this is a mess for me, because I have to search among 1,000 files, which is the best one and all that. So here, what's recommended? That at the beginning, especially if you have a folder dedicated to these types of tests you do while developing the application, once you've already developed, no is the good code. So it's best to structure all those. Once you know what works, you put it here inside SRC in a structured way. We'll try to do that later too. Let's see. Of course, we went from more than 10 seconds to 0.19. So let's say here, data. It's good. Perfect. Well, before moving to ChromaDB, which is the database, I want to leave the YAML file structure well set up. I mean, I don't want to be going back to it later. So let's work on this properly. And we'll tell it, I want to structure all the PDF documents now. But there's a problem here. Because in the first pages, which is the complete table of contents, well, maybe we shouldn't take them into account when creating the files. Because that information already comes by default after the table of contents. What would you recommend here? I mean, I don't know if it's convenient to read the table of contents or not. Well, I've already skipped it. Because in the end, once we have this well structured from the JSON, I mean, from the YAML files, maybe it's silly to have it in YAML. I mean, we could already jump directly to ChromaDB, and that way we don't have so many intermediate documents. I'm going to well, of course, if we already have the process verified that the information is extracted well, don't you think we could already directly create the parser that goes from PDF to ChromaDB? And let's see. Okay, it's going to do that. What I want to see here. I'm going to close the file. Here it has the patterns for how it finds, how it segments the information from legal documents, the path to that local server. Right now, it's not a server, it's a folder. We have ChromaDB here, which creates a SQLite for us, but in a way already with embeddings and structured. Inside here will appear the compressed documents to structure the information well. I think we're nailing it here, that it's going to do it well. We have that entire PDF document, which are several laws, all from the energy sector, structured in the database. I have the logs too. Now here it's already working. Here we already have, for example, social bonus vulnerable consumer. Here it finds where they are, in which article, and what keywords. Of course, imagine going from here to typical PDF readers, where the information comes here and you say, I want social bonus, and it searches. Well, it looks for it. If we put social bonus, let's see, complete vulnerable, of course it doesn't even find any of them, because there's no match for all that text exactly as is. But having built this solution, well, it does a similarity search based on the articles, which is like, as I understand, the atomic unit of legal documents, and it gives you the information already by similarity so you can search it easily and you don't find not found here. So, what are we going to do? Let's see. Filter by titles. Let's say 2 here. I've already so we already have it in the database, well structured, and we could do the queries. I'm not going to go deeper right now into, since we already have something functional that we can work with, I'm going to focus on the application part. That is, how can I, without having to use Python code, which here in the end I have to execute uv-run, which is Python code. The thing, well, this facing the user is quite, any user, well, whoever doesn't know how to program can't do it. So here in the Documents section, let's remember here that we already have the ETL. Now it works. Here. So what we've already done, ETL to convert PDF documents to the database in ChromaDB. We have the information structured. Now we have to create the Python API so that any user from a web application, even if in the case you have your own internal web and a chat system, or for your users, you can also make it available there, because right now it's local. And we'll do a demo. So we're moving now to the API part. I'm going to tell it here in the chat. What? Perfect. Well, we've already validated the ETL from PDF to ChromaDB, and now I would need to create an API so that other web application clients, or even create a software as a service, let's say, can use this tool. How do you recommend I do it? Obviously, we're going to work with Fast API, and I need how the folder structure would look inside SRC before you program. There are times when, now, honestly, it's amazing, dude. I don't know. I mean, I imagine. If it weren't for AI, getting to this solution that we have in only an hour and 20 minutes, and already having all this set up here, before this would take you easily, I don't know, a week minimum, and not even, because you'd have to research. Many libraries you don't know. You have to go to Google. Does it work? Doesn't it work? We're going to move from a stage where knowledge was king, let's say. Well, either you knew it or you couldn't do it. Then there were people who did search on Google directly to building. I mean, those who know how to build solutions with AI this way. We're going to have applications and facilities for users and society in general to streamline processes, for example, legal matters, or build applications or even companies that need this type of tools to be able to streamline processes in their calculations and make it much faster. And in the end, well, that otherwise you wouldn't do. Like, for example, I don't know, everything is going to move toward building, so less bullshit and more construction. Okay, what does it propose? It proposes the SRC folder, that we have the API, that we have API keys for the future SaaS even, that the ChromaDB client is there. Perfect. And the logic of models for the API. Okay, I like it. Perfect. Avanti tutti. Shit. But here, I've already consumed the total context, which is one of the things. If you don't know, the chat from the whole conversation we've had accumulates all the text we've had previously. If you go here to context, well, you're going to see that we've maxed it out. We're already here at 70%, and we already have to compact it. So apparently, it's the limit. We would have to tell it now that I want to do a compact for the implementation of the API system. And now the conversation gets reset, let's say, with a summary of and we can already work again. I'm going to go because I've been at it for I'm going to remove the camera. Well, disaster. I'm back. I don't know, but, of course, the hat there is already a mess on me. Give me a second. I'm going to click continue. I'm going to add a bit more light. Let's see. The king is so-and-so, which is there in them. If I go here to the SRC folder, we can see it's doing it. And when it finishes, it will let us know. Give me a second, and I'm going to get some water, and I'll be right. All right? I think this is working now. The thing is, it's testing the application here. For example, it's searching for self-consumption, and I'm seeing an error there. Let's see now. Let's continue. Okay, this is working now. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, let's recall before starting the demo what the main goal of today's application was. If you remember, at the beginning we wanted, I'll give you localhost back. It's possible. Here, let's see. So, we want a system, an application that's an AI agent connected to PDFs, in this case like a legal assistant developed with Python, which is what we've built. The goal, which is the live coding we've developed today to build the application, was to have a chat interface where we ask it a question. For example, how is the secondary band price calculated? And it reviews the documentation and then gives us the result. In the end, we had an example here that I mentioned in another stream. If you want to watch it, that stream is... I'll put it in the comments later. And we were talking about how to do specific calculations for energy generation billing. We had several formulas here, and it's a YAML document where we collect all that information. And that's what we want to build now. So, for that, we're going to go now, once we have the Python API built, to the demo. And this would be in... Okay, I'm going to lower. Okay, and so, this would be in... Here. How could I create a chat interface where I tell it, well, query, and create a document of the calculations, blah blah blah, and automatically it will go fetch from the API we've developed. So, to develop it, we tell it. Perfect. Now I'd like to set up the API as an MCP to develop the... Wait, I'm going to repeat it again. Now, I'm going to explain what an MCP is before continuing, because right now, if you notice, when the chat wants to query the information, it has to be running curl commands through the URL. However, the folks at Anthropic created MCP as a standardized protocol that AI agents, in this case Claude Code, can connect to in a simple way to query and use the API tools. And that's what we're going to build. For that, we're going to work with FastMCP, which is the library we have here. And since we've already built it as an API, it's going to be very straightforward to integrate it as MCP using the integrations here. So I can tell it here. Copying the URL. Perfect. Well, first of all, I'm going to give you a practical case of... Wait, nothing's showing up here. MCP. Look, these are the MCPs I have installed. If I wanted to search for one, for example, context 7, I could tell it here, use context events to search for information on how to integrate my API to an MCP server. So what it's going to do here is, the chat is going to use the context7 tool, which is what we have here. If you notice, MCP click, info. And this is the way we want the chat to interact with our legal information search engine in the BOE documents. Directly with the tool and easily. Right now, it's giving it information. And then it does the search for how to integrate the MCP server that exposes blah blah blah. The thing is, it's going off on a tangent here and using tools I don't want. I want you to use fast MCP. There go the MCP libraries. The most convenient one for us as developers, for those of us who code, is fast MCP, which is the one I've shown you here. There's also another one, which is this one here. This one, MCP, which is the one created by Anthropic themselves. And here we have the Python SDKs. And let's say this is the core for working with Python with this type of tools. The MCP. Although, of course, certain aspects of user development aren't as good for integrating with Fast API and other types of functionalities. So the one being used most nowadays is Fast MCP. Let's see here. It's driving me crazy. There are quite a few of you here in the live stream, right? You're all very quiet, eh? Either you're bored already, but no, because some of you are hanging in there. Or you're there in the background. Comment something there. What do you think of the stream? Are you learning things that maybe are the ones that have, let's say, impacted you the most? That you didn't know before, but now you do. I hope the next stream we'll do it on Zoom, and then you can talk to me directly, and I'll force you to talk, man. Make this more entertaining, like a class. Let's see here. I think it worked now, and I'll force you to talk, man. Make this more entertaining, like a class. Let's see here. I think it worked now. I think it worked now. I'm going to say here, perfect. Could you keep the server running and create an MCP.json file to connect to it in this project? The MCP.json thing is a document where we have to specify the server where we're going to run this tool, which is the one we have here. So here, apparently, it's already running. We can do MCP, but we don't see it yet here because we need to restart Claude Code. So I'm going to say here, Control+C twice, we exit, we go back in, and we should have the MCP enabled and we have it detected at least, but it's failing. Let's see here. Of course, because if I close the Claude Code session and the process that was open on the port was there, well, I can't access it anymore. Although I don't think, that wasn't the problem because it was already running. So I'm going to tell it here. Check the logs because it's giving me an authentication error or something. I don't know, because here it's giving us an error that when connecting via HTTP, apparently there are failures, but it shouldn't be like that. It should connect fine. Let me say, use context7 to search documentation. What part of working with PDFs isn't working for you? What's driving you crazy? And how would you like to make better use of it? Someone here commented, well, this PDF thing, if searches, it's driving me crazy. I can't make good use of it. Give a little more context and I'll comment. Okay, meanwhile, look at what the chat has done here. It went to the Fast MCP library, asked about this. About our problem, and here they've told it the solution. They say here, of course, to work with HTTP, you have to specify transport and URL, blah blah. And now it should be able to connect fine. So let's do MCP. It's still failing because I haven't restarted Claude. I'll open it again, and now we'll see. No, it's not connected. When the screen appears, yes. I'm going to check here. Okay, what does it say here? Perfuse. Well, I notice they don't get properly indexed, so to speak. And when you query about the content, or to show some part, it doesn't pull correct values. Like, it doesn't analyze the entire document, it leaves things out. Of course, the problem here is that many times the chat loses context because I don't know if you're running it in agent mode. I mean, you tell it, hey, I want you to search for this, and then it gives you the results. I didn't find the solution, but I want you to search for it this other way. Because you didn't give me, and of course, if in the database where the documents are, that information isn't there, well, it's not going to find it for you. I mean, first you have to make sure all the content is in the database, and then how you access it. Of course, if you already know specifically what keywords you want to search for, you can enable tools for it to search by those keywords, and then give you. But here the problem is in how to structure the documents. It's basically an ETL problem: extraction, transform, and load into the database. If you've noticed, we've had to structure the documents in a format adapted to the types of legal texts, because there, as we're going to test later, it's going to search for the information. Well, maybe first it has to search by articles, or first it has to search by types of laws. You have to give all those tools to the chat so it can contextualize the structure first. And then, afterwards, you start searching for the specific information once the chat understands the structure. Let's see. Let's test this now. I'll remove this. We'll test what I mentioned to you here in a bit. Let's see. MCP. And now we're going to tell it. The main goal was that I had the formulas document here. I don't have it. Pricing. I had a document around here. Okay, look. This is the document I want to compose. Okay, so I'm going to tell the chat here. With just giving it the information from this document, I mean the first words, so it knows more or less how it's structured. I want to say, I'm going to give here, escape. Now I need you to query information in the database that tells me how billing calculations are done for energy generation units, depending on whether they're in a specific program, in a type of dispatch, phases, whether it's up or down, etc. I'll give you an example, and let's see what it does. Now it should connect. Now it should connect. Wait, it messed up here. Okay, so I give it the example. It should interpret that it needs to search within and now, here notice it starts with legal docs, which here in theory should be able to connect. Okay, here notice here. Now comes the interesting part. It says, hey, how does this tool work? And it tells it, semantic search of legal documents. It has usage examples here. And here it tells it the schema, the search text, how many results, what law, etc. And now it starts here to search. And it says, for example, reading and billing of energy supplies in low voltage. Of course, here this is starting to slip a bit. And it gives it the information from that article. Then here it starts with another type of article. And of course, I'm not seeing it find the information correctly. Because it's searching an energy billing that's done for the energy billing that's done from retailers to the consumer. I mean, you and me in our homes. What I want is for it to search for the information on billing calculations for the companies that generate energy. That's where it's slipping. Here, for example, it says remuneration parameters. But well, let's see here. Here it tells me, I've analyzed several searches, database of legal documents, and this is what I found. The system operator settles. Resolution for technical restrictions. Defines the base operation of daily operating. The code isn't specifically there. Of course, here it already tells me there are possible failures that aren't in the original PDF document. And this is concerning because it means the extraction to the database hasn't been done correctly. I'm going to say here, what do you think is missing from the electrical energy code? All of them should be there. Of course, now we enter the phase of, once we have the tool that's already working, how the user can use it, we get into the details. When it's failing, because if you go in retrospect to see what how we can solve it, and see if some document failed that hasn't been extracted correctly. And it should tell us here, of course. Here it already says a large part of the document is missing. Now it's redoing the entire process, because I don't know if there was some error or a document was already there and they got duplicated or something like that, and it should figure it out. Of course, here maybe it's not you. Name, JC. I'm going to call you. But here, JC, the problem I see is, similar to what you mentioned, that the tool has trouble finding the information. Here it's, for example, that maybe the extraction didn't fail, and in the database, it doesn't have it, specifically. I don't know if this is something that happens to you too, or you don't know how to do the debugging. Let's say it's like finding the error. It's quite complex. Here now, in theory, the sections and articles have been processed. The thing is, there's something that maybe isn't selecting correctly. Now, here it already says that Article 31 of Royal Decree 2019, Management and Settlement of each of the System Adjustment Services, here comes how technical restrictions are settled, adjustment services, deviations, but of course, it says it's not there, but it should be. Let's see if it searches directly in the PDF, without going through the tool we've developed, and it has it like that. Of course, here too, JC. Especially consider that working like this with the chat to develop the code. It's not so much right now about continuing to develop code to reach the solution, but rather creating systems so the chat itself can investigate why that error is happening. So you forget a bit first about solving the problem immediately and look for ways to enable the chat to be able to see the results and why the system is failing, and then go find some clear conclusions to know the way you need to proceed to solve and structure the documents correctly. Find the bug in the cable there. Debugging. And now it's here, instead of article, and that's wait. Look, forget right now about creating this formula document because the extraction system obviously isn't working correctly. I need you to investigate those parts of the extraction where articles weren't found, because maybe they're written another way. Figure out how any type of legal documentation is structured in this PDF, and create the system, the schema, to structure the information so you can find them all through parsing. This is like driving, you know? Here, if I leave it alone, it crashes and starts right now solving a problem that doesn't matter, because we have a root problem we must solve with higher priority. Anyway, this is like getting a driver's license, but with artificial intelligence. If you don't stop it when you should, you crash. And now, what you're going to do is that identify all sections with 0 extracted articles. It's going to see what happened and propose a solution. We're going to let it work there, and we'll come back. Here it's already found. It says here pattern. Well, there are some called articles. There are others called rules. There are others called provisions, and others that are called annexes. In theory, well, it should already know how to extract it, and it's going to create a new parser to extract the information correctly. Okay, now it's indexing again with that new indexer that it's now called V2, with the new regex patterns to structure the legal document. Let's see when it finishes. We'll test it again. I've hit the chat limit, compact and continue. Well, here now there's an error because according to what we established before, we work by article. But now that we've found that sometimes they call them rules, provisions, well, it fails there because there's a class somewhere that's document metadata that isn't correctly capturing all the typologies. And there, it's created a new schema so it can query the information. So now it restarts and tests it. Sometimes I feel like a commentator here for soccer, commenting on what the AI is doing. It messes up, it fails. It got it. Truth is, it's not a bad permission denied. Curl, there's a server that was running before, and since it's failing, it's getting confused between the API we had before and the one we have now. And there's some cache somewhere that's causing issues. But I think it's going into a loop now. I hope it doesn't delete something from my computer. Here we go. I'm telling it here to create a Python file in the scripts folder to see what works. Instead of messing around with terminal commands and also debugging what's needed, I'll have it create a command to display the information. Otherwise, we'll never finish. All right. I think this is working now, but there's something going on with the cache. So I'm going to restart Cloud, and we'll test if the tool can find the information now. Let me check here. MCP is connected. I'm going to say now. Let's see. The message we sent before at the beginning. Just a tip. If you press the up arrow on your keyboard, you can navigate through previous messages. Let me query the database. But wait. You need to do it with MCP. You need to do it with MCP. There's something else here I'm going to ask it. Do you think we should modify the MCP or FAST API so you can work better? But here also, JC, what you were commenting at the beginning, that we already know the chat has the document structure that was missing. I don't know if you've tried using the chat this way, through an agent that can search within documents, and if I don't find the solution, it can continue, etc. Here, since it's showing quite a few errors and such, and there are things that aren't supported, I'm going to ask if we need to improve the tool, the API, so it can search for information better. Now here it looks like it's telling me what it's saying. By article type, disposition or annex, the keyword, exact search. If we put keywords, filter by chapter. Let's see if... Yes, of course. Here what happens with the chat is we tried it, so it starts searching with similarity search that we worked on earlier. But sometimes it doesn't want similarity search. It wants an exact search. And that's exactly where we need to. After having tested the tool, go back to developing the system and implement those new functionalities so it can satisfy the needs of these use cases. In the end, you'll discover this if you need to develop it through trial and error. That's how everything in programming works. Because we're already working with edge cases, very specific cases. That's where you put the system to the test, and what makes it improve as well. The bad thing is, you create the solution in a very specific way. For example, only for legal documents from the energy sector. If we then wanted to make it a system for any legal document from the BOE, well, maybe we'd have to redefine the schema. But, well, for now I see it's working well, so we'll continue this way. Here it looks like it has it. Maybe we need to... Let me see here. Remove. We just restarted. Let's test again. Now there's another problem here. Need to restart the server. It found it. Goal. No, it's already been 2 hours. My energy is drained. Let's see if we get to the solution now. Almost there. We're close. Come on, we got it. Yes, there's something here I don't like. It's using Python code. But I think it's doing it for the result that comes from the documentation to then search for exact words. Well, this here needs fixing. All right, based on the interaction you've had so far, what do you think we should improve in the ETL? What improvement proposals do you recommend? In general, here there's an important limitation of ChromaDB that says it doesn't support contains. It only supports equals. I don't know. Here. I'm going to put on my glasses. I don't know. Well, it says it didn't find the restrictions. Hey, is there anyone here? Any BOE expert? Energy sector topic. Are the POs in the BOE or outside the BOE? They should be inside the BOE. They should be inside the BOE. I'm going to check some document here from what I had. Let's see. Here come the technical formulas. But maybe the 1.51 won't be here. Or it might not be correct. We're not getting there, folks. We're not getting there. Here, nothing but errors when we get to the core. But we keep going. Here comes. Look. Here I found them. What happens is that for some reason, which of course will be the annexes. Well, they're not there. And here we would need the same, baby. Of course, here it seems the formulas were in the annex, and in the end it couldn't find them because they weren't being captured correctly. And now, with the problem identified and the solution developed, we should have it. Okay, it's going to be doing the reindexing, extracting the PDF, putting it in the database again with these new patterns found in the annex. And hopefully, now when it comes to finding the formula, it'll do it without a problem. All right, I've reached the limit here. When I reach the limit, one of the things I usually do is right after compacting the conversation, hit continue. Also another thing, and this is that many times it does auto-compact automatically. If we go here in Cloud, dangerously skip, and we go to Settings, you can see all the settings here. So here, if you change auto-compact to true or false, I have it on false so it doesn't do it automatically. So I can choose. Because many times it stops you before time, and you have to be compacting almost all the time. So, little tricks. And here you have many more examples of configurations you can work with to make it work well. It wasn't detecting the new schema ingestion. I think it's because Cloud Code wasn't restarted. Now that we have it restarted, it should be able to search. Here we have new solutions and it should find the billings. But not here. Now here, I think it's gone into a loop. And since we have several things in the folder, it's getting confused. We have several folders in ChromaDB, delete them all, and run the reindexing. Is it deleting them or not? I'll delete them now. ChromaDB usually works by collections, and here you can see how the files are being modified on this collection we have here. Before we had several folders, and probably the chat was duplicating or adding on top of another. Who knows? So we've deleted everything, starting from 0 with ChromaDB, and it should find the information now. In this case, since the server keeps running, the API, and what the API does is connect to ChromaDB, and the code is the same, in this case, we wouldn't need to restart Cloud Code, because the changes are external to the tool. Good. It's finding something now, although not everything. I'll do another stream continuing this one, and we'll finish the job. I'll probably schedule it for the weekend, and we'll do the continuation. Well, I think it found it. No, I didn't say anything. All right, let's wrap this up. It found it. Let's do the complete interaction for the practical case, the demo, and we're done. So, imagine we're starting from scratch with the chat. I'll close this here, open it again. And since we've already developed the tool for professionals in the company or whoever works with official BOE documents from the energy sector, well, they'll be able to query with MCP how to work with that tool. So if they have it connected, for that they need to have this file we have here. In case they want to have it on their own computer, if they navigate to a terminal and type cloud in the terminal, they'll directly have access here. With the bar, if you type MCP, it's connected to legal documents. And here you can ask it the question we had before and we'll complete it. So now I need you to search all the documentation to find in all the programs. What types of calculations exist according to the existing categories? Phases, direction, offer type, etc. So now the chat is going to work with the tool we've created. It can also use some Python code to access the information in a simpler or more direct way. But this is something. Since everyone eventually has Python installed on their computer, it comes in the terminal by default, or in the servers you work with. To make them available to users in a web application, you have Python installed and can work with the information there. For now, it's not working. I mean, it doesn't need Python code. We'll see that later. I'm going to be a little crazy here. Of course, here it says it's already found relevant information. Adjustment services, supply guarantees, etc. It will continue with some more searches to find the extra information it needs, and then it will compose the file. Here, if you notice, from one search it finds new content, sees it's missing something, searches again for another reference. And that's how the chat in agent mode, because it's capable of interpreting the result it gets, can reach the information. That's another thing I see is missing from web applications that want to work like ChatGPT or an agent. It doesn't just take into account the information from each message at each moment, but the entire previous conversation. And that needs to be programmed into and now, here it's going to structure the information for me. Put it in a YAML document. It's working here. Intraday market. Daily. Restrictions in intraday market. Deviations. Interruptibility. Capacity payments, etc. Since it has all the information, I think it's going to be quite extensive. Let's see what it did here. Here, it even gave us a flow diagram of how settlements work. First, a daily market that goes to the daily program, base operation. Then there are technical restrictions from the first phase, second phase. Intraday market, supply guarantee, CO2 reduction. Then comes the final hourly program, and then we're in market settlement, deviations, and adjustment services. The truth is, having this in the chat, I remember when I was researching how the information from each program is structured. Remember, here we have in the energy sector for the information that's generated tomorrow. Today at 12 noon. In the viable daily program, energy is committed. Then, as time passes, you configure it better, selling more or less based on weather forecasts. That activates or deactivates renewable energy, making energy prices fluctuate, and depending on that, you sell or buy more gas. Here we see how positions are adjusted as time passes. And having all this information organized, the BOE doesn't give you a table. They put tables, but they don't give you the flow, more or less, for you to understand what's happening day to day. And now, with this capability, we have to interact directly with the BOE. We have here documentation of the energy taxonomy. We can interpret different formulas, what markets exist, restrictions according to phases, what formulas they have, how costs are settled, etc. And with this documentation, we can continue working to improve understanding, or also incorporate advanced calculation systems to do the billing for energy generation and give more accurate information. This solution for the AI agent connected to PDFs, I'll create a practical case on the website and you'll surely be able to see it. For that, I recommend here datans.com. You go to Learn Streams. You see here the series we're working on that we worked on today, which is vibe coding. And if you want to stay updated on new releases, you click here and subscribe. And then, on the other hand, if you want to receive article publications, you can register in this application. Let me give you a second here. You can subscribe here. To get the updates, I'll send a weekly email. And in that weekly email, I'll put details of everything I'm publishing, and it'll be the practical case of the article we worked on today. Then, if you want to have a private one-on-one call and get to know each other, to see what you have going on, to catch up or whatever, and if then a possibility to collaborate on a project arises, you can come here. And we'll do a Zoom call. You tell me your problem, what you're facing, and I'll tell you how to work on it based on all the experience I've had working with projects and other clients. So there you go.